How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi, host of Tier Talk, and welcome to Guns for Hire. Guns for Hire is located in Woodland Park, New Jersey, right off of Route 46, with over 120 guns. You guys, you and your family here can have a lot of fun with over 120 guns here for rent. And thank you, Anthony Calandro, for letting us use Gun for Hire range. Now, today I want to talk about the officers involved shooting, but most importantly, the officer's perspective, the subjective perspective of an officer who's involved in a shooting. Most likely, when you deal with the public usually minimizes or negates the officer's perspective. And when you're looking at officer-involved shooting, you have to look at things within context. You can't automatically eliminate the officer's perspective because they're the ones that are going through it. They're the ones that visualize the threat, and only their interpretation can tell you why that was a threat. So today, my guests are going to be Michael Wolhfert, my use of force expert. Michael, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And we've done many shows together about use of force. He is my go-to guy. And also Lieutenant Dalton Price. He is my expert as well in law enforcement. We did a great show on community policing, and the reason why I want his perspective is because anything related to the education of the community and the better relationship between the public and law enforcement, Lieutenant Dalton Price is my man. So stand by and we'll get ready for the... All right, so as mentioned before, I want to talk about officer-involved shooting. I believe that most of the time when we have an officer-involved shooting, the public never gets to see the subjective perspective of the officer that was involved, which I feel is very important because it's the full context of the situation. I feel that most people are making judgment out of context. And also on another avenue, I want to discuss this too. When people are talking about the need for more transparency from each department, I also want to add that the public needs to understand what they're looking at. So everybody's always talking about training for one side. You know, it always seems to be that one side's at fault, which only builds animosity and resistance. But if people could actually see that maybe training is needed on both sides, where if someone's going to look at the information, they need to know exactly what they're looking at. So again, I'll start off with Mike. Mike, use of force, how important is it for the subjective perspective of the officer going through it?
Well, the entire context, the totality of the circumstances really matters in every situation. And we don't really see that. We only see a partial 15, 30-second clip of the entire incident. Now all of a sudden we cast judgment. Where once that goes to court and now all the testimonies heard, all the videos shown, all the interviews, then you really get to see the whole body of work. We're only seeing, it's like getting a book, reading 3 pages, and all of a sudden thinking now you know the whole story.
Right, and would you agree with that? I mean, you're very big with community policing. You have a book on the market that relates to community policing. Right. What's the name of the book?
Community Policing 3.0.
Community Policing 3.0. Now, how important is it for you, for the public to understand the perspective of a law enforcement professional at that moment?
It is primary that the public understands, but we have to understand as law enforcement officers that the public only got a part of the story. So when they cast their judgment, even though I think it's not fair, I have to understand that they don't know the whole story. So sometimes we take the time to explain to them exactly what happened, why it happened, how it happened. Now they can make their own opinion. They may not agree with the police, but at least they have the full story. So it's kind of our responsibility to explain to them what happened and understand there's a lot going on. We all want to go home at the end of the day. That's very, very important. So we want to protect the public, we want to protect ourselves. In the meantime, I need for this person to listen to what I'm saying so that we can both go home alive.
Well, let me ask something. So what, in your opinion, and I'll start with you, Lieutenant Dalton, in your opinion, what is it that the public doesn't understand about an officer-involved shooting in regards to the person who, let's say the suspect, you go onto a scene, the officer has a mindset. Let's say you're called onto a scene and the officer is being told that the person may have a weapon. What's going on in the officer's head as they approach the scene and they see a suspect that matches the description of the individual that a caller just called about?
First of all, the public, from where they stand, they don't understand what's going on. They know that I'm a police officer. They assume this person is just a civilian. They don't know why we're encountering each other. So now there's this encounter. In my mind, dispatchers told me, this is the person, this is what they look like, this is what they've done, and whether or not they have a weapon. So as I'm getting closer to the scene, I have all that information in my computer. And I have to process that information, so when I run into this person, I realize, yes, that person matches the description. Yes, that could be the person. Yes, they could have a weapon. So I have to go through the scenario as if all those things are true. Give those person the commands. By giving them commands, it gives them the chance to explain to me who they are. And not so much in words, who are you? What's your name? Show me your hands. I need you to do this. That's how the explanation comes out. Now, as things start to unfold, I get to figure out, is this the person that I think it is, yes or no? And the most important thing is that that person goes home alive also.
So again, Mike, again, if you want to kind of continue his thought, is basically you're analyzing the scene, correct? You're trying to determine if there's a threat in the environment. So if the person that, the suspect or the person that you think is the suspect isn't listening, does that threat still exist?
Well, the threat exists as soon as they say it. You got the call that says the person may have a weapon. Until you determine the person has a weapon or has not a weapon, what do they have? As far as you know, a weapon. Until it's determined otherwise, right? So we're there to take belief and confirm it or dispel it, and that's the whole idea. And I think people fail to realize, though, is during this interaction that the speed of life is faster than people think.
Well, that's where I think the public doesn't realize. I think the public doesn't realize how fast a weapon can come out of someone's pocket, or how fast someone can turn around and have something on them. And when we did the scenario, we were running through the scenarios, I realized that when you're telling that person, put your hands up, and they're not putting their hands up, and they're constantly putting their hands in their pocket, you got to start getting anxious yourself, correct?
Absolutely. You're not sure what you're dealing with. Once you establish that the person do understand what you're saying and they're not listening to you, now things start to go through your mind. Why is this person not listening to me? Why are they not following my commands? I need to see your hands. Take your hands out of your pocket. Person takes their hands out, they put them back. Also realizing the person could be nervous. That's fine. Give clear, concise commands on what you need done. Understanding that this can go bad at any time. If this person decides to do something, and understanding that his action is way faster than your reaction. Because this person, their mind is, this is what I'm going to do. You're a professional. Your mind operates on if, then. If, then. If he does this, then I'm going to do that. Their mind is not operating that way. They have one thing in mind. They know what they're going to do. They don't have to think about it. So we have to think, we have to process it, and we have to act.
And that's the key, actually, the reaction aspect. A lot of people don't realize that when the officer's called to the scene, they are going to unfortunately, there's a reaction aspect. They're going to wind up, if the suspect does something foolish and does not listen, the officer is only reacting to the individual not listening to the directives that the officer provide to control the scene. Like, an officer's number one intent on the scene is to obviously gain control, but to resolve it, to de-escalate. If the person chooses to ignore the directives, in my mind, I'm going to think, you're not giving me the chance to de-escalate, and if something happens, I'm only reacting. So how come, in your mind, how come the public doesn't look at us as reacting? How come the public automatically sees, even if the person has ignored multiple directives, they still see us as the aggressor?
Well, all force is going to be reactive force. Whatever you're doing is dictated upon what the person is doing. So if the person complied 100%, there'd be no reason to use any force. But the idea is that person is somebody's brother, sister, mother, dad. So they can feel that person's innocent in their eyes, and because we don't know. We don't know either. We're just assuming what we know from the story, that they could be guilty of something. Probable cause, right? It's a probability that they have a weapon. Do they? I don't know. I have to confirm or dispel belief. And that's the whole idea. And when you think about it, it takes a quarter of a second for someone to draw a weapon on you. An eye blink is an eighth of a second. So that's how fast people really move and react. A Hall of Fame baseball hitter hits what percentage? 300, right? So 3 out of 10 times he's correct, and he's a Hall of Famer. So how fast do you think that ball's traveling? How do you think he has to process all that information that the lieutenant's talking about? It's no different, but this time it's life or death on the line, not whether you're going to hit a home run.
Right, and Mike, who by the way owns Justifiable Force, it's MMA, right? You teach MMA?
We teach a bunch of firearms, defensive tactics, things like that.
Right, and basically, I'll tell you something, he has evolutionized use of force, and basically what we take in the academy. He's really made it more practical and live and on the scene, a lot more fluid than it was before. But going back, Michael mentioned something to me, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Michael told me that sometimes the public doesn't understand it because use of force is just not pretty.
It's never pretty. You have to realize, or we have to realize, that when we use a certain amount of force, especially deadly force, that was somebody's son, and Mike just mentioned somebody's son, somebody's husband, brother, sister, and they're either seriously injured or no longer with us. That's what happened. We can't expect the family to understand our side of this. All they know is they lost a family member. At the same time, I'm somebody's husband, I'm somebody's father. There are people that care about me. So we're both in the same scenario where nobody wants to get hurt. So we understand that, but know that violence is here. Once it starts to take place, it's going to be bad. There's no way to dress it up. He has a knife, I have a gun. He has a gun, I have a gun. We're both in a fist fight. A fist fight is not going to be pretty. Right. Somebody's going to get hurt. That's how it's going to come out. The thing is, we have to keep it down as much as possible.
Let me also ask a question too, because me and Mike were mentioning a lot of instances recently have dealt with people who deal with mental health concerns. Mm-hmm. I'll go to Mike first, and I'll go to you, Lieutenant. If someone has a mental health concern, does that make them less dangerous?
No, and as a matter of fact, it makes them more dangerous, because the whole fact is we're dealing with somebody that's unreasonable, right? So the whole concept is a reasonable person would put their hands up, interlock their fingers, and not reach into their pockets. So now we have somebody that's not only not listening to commands, but now they're not reasonable with anything, not just basic simple commands, but just how do I know what they're going to do? They're unpredictable, right? It's like a ticking time bomb.
Right.
And it's unfortunate due to illness, but that's the reality once again.
Right, and even if the person is special needs, right, and even if you do know history about them, they could still commit to an impulsive act that will cause you to react, right? I mean, we had the incident in the Bronx, and I know it may be somewhat questionable, but the sergeant in New York with the older woman, he talked her down. And then the second time around, okay, he took a life, but let's emphasize the fact that he talked her down the first time. Something must have happened impulsively that he felt the need, and he has a right to want to go home, correct? Officers have a right to live, I would assume, right? So therefore, don't they have a right to protect themselves at one point? I mean, doesn't their life have some type of value? Again, just bent in there. I didn't mean to, but it's just an ongoing, an issue. But also moving forward, again, just to build the respect with the public here. Do you believe there are ways or opportunities for us to educate the public in officer-involved shootings in regards to the subjective perspective of an officer involved in that moment at that time?
Absolutely. One thing I like to say first about people with mental problems. One thing you can predict, the only thing you can predict about a person that has a mental problem is that they're unpredictable. Okay, that we can predict. We have no idea what they're going to do, how they're going to react. We have to come in with the best attitude and try to de-escalate it. But what happens after that, we don't control. A part of the issue is you're calling the police to situations where you should not be calling the police to. You have a person in your family who has a mental problem. You should be calling the hospital. You should be getting that person some help somehow or another. You can take the best, the nicest police officer in the world, and I think I am the nicest. However, when I show up to a scene, I bring my weapon with me. So everywhere I go, every scene I show up to, there's at least one gun. No matter how nice I am to this person, if this person changes their personality all of a sudden comes towards me, and I start to lose this battle, I'm going to use my weapon because I'm losing. I brought my gun there, and this is an option for me. We need to get to a point where people are getting their family members the help that they need. So when something goes wrong, you're not calling the police. But also understand, when you call me and you tell the dispatcher that my brother John is here, he beat up my mother, he beat me up, he smacked my child, and now he's throwing stuff around the house. You expect me to come and calm John down. If John hit his mother and his sister and his niece, John doesn't care about me. John's not going to listen to me. And I walk in the house and start trying to tell John what to do, and things start to go bad. John doesn't know me. He doesn't even love me. These people he loved and he hurt. So he's not going to listen to me. You need to get him the help that he needs, and that's from the hospital. You're calling police to scenes that they shouldn't be at, and when things go bad, you're blaming the police. A lot of these situations, we never should have been there.
And I just want a question that gets asked a lot, and I'll go to Mike. I actually want both you guys to answer this. So I'll go to Mike first and then to you, is why didn't you use a less lethal method? A less lethal method like a taser?
Sometimes if it's available, but once again, time is always of the essence. Just because a weapon's available doesn't mean it can be deployed in the time it's going to stop the threat in the case. And the whole idea is, I know we mentioned earlier about shooting a guy in the leg, or how come, why don't we shoot center mass, because it's the most likely to actually hit the person and to stop the person. There's not an intention to kill anybody, but the center mass is the largest target area and the most likely to produce a stop, which can stop the person from doing harm to you or others. And if anyone tries to shoot a person in the leg, it's not that easy. It's not that easy to shoot a person, period.
Right.
Like a moving target is not that very easy just to shoot. The perception is that, like the old Wild West movies, why don't you shoot the ground to scare the guy? What if the round goes off and hits somebody innocent?
Well, just real quick, in the news today, someone shot an armadillo and it ricocheted.
And believe it or not, though, there's use of force policies, and there's groups out there that are saying, hey, let's bring back warning shots. Things that are just crazy.
Yeah, and again, and officers are in charge of every round they fire. They're responsible for every bullet that goes out of that weapon. So I had a conversation with someone I worked with today, and I mentioned the point that we're not shooting to kill, we're shooting to stop. And that's the key. And we're going to shoot what stops the threat immediately, and also what's safest for the community. What's safest for the community is shooting someone center mass because it's the biggest target. And again, I got to get your perspective on this. Why can't officers, again, the same thing I asked Mike, is always go for that less lethal force?
First of all, it's not always available. What are my options? I'm in a room with a guy, he's coming towards me, we're 15, 20 feet apart. He comes towards me with a knife. I have an option. I can use a taser maybe, that might work, or I can use my firearm that is guaranteed to work. Which one should I use? I can use my nightstick, which means I have to get close to him, or I can use my firearm, which is guaranteed to work. We need guarantees. Mm-hmm. And the firearm, the mace, the nightstick, the taser, those things are not guaranteed to work. That's why you have to have the other option. But going to that option, understand that I didn't create this situation. This situation was created by someone else. I just happened to be here. And now you're asking me to use tender hands when you're not asking the other person to use tender hands. You're not having a conversation about why that person is acting the way they're acting. But you want me to express that, well, we want you to be nicer. Under what circumstances? And at what cost? Okay, is it going to help anyone if I lose my life? So no one should lose their life in these situations. The best thing is the officer shows up, gets the situation under control, this guy goes to the hospital, gets his help, the officer goes back to work, end of story, no problem.
Okay, so do you think like what the public sees like in social media, like, okay, here we go, another officer being recorded, through whatever incident, whatever use of force incident they're going through. What is it the public is not seeing? What is it? Who wants to go first? You want to go first and give it off to Mike? Mike,
Well, they're not seeing the story, right? They're not seeing the perspective, and they're never would think of that scenario in their own head, in their own life. A lot of times, people are educated through movies, so now when they see these things, they expect you to do the James Bond judo chop, and then the scene is over, and the guy just falls down, and then you handcuff him, or you do some other crazy things. But the idea is, reality is fast, not pretty, and unpredictable.
right, and I want to add on something on that because I agree with you 100%. I believe that now that we have more civilian review committees, I know they're doing that stuff like that in Chicago because of use of force instances there, the public has to have a sense of training and a sense of, okay, an understanding of the job. But in my perspective, it's very hard for them to get that if they haven't been involved in it at that moment, and I believe that, without that sense of knowledge, they're always going to have that bias, and I don't want to sound harsh, but I really feel sometimes the bias is very anti-police, where they go in looking to help the other side and not really understanding the officer's perspective of why they may have pulled the trigger. Now this person is going to cast judgment without the knowledge of really understanding the heat of the moment, living it, breathing it, and the reason why the officer had to fire the weapon. So again, in your perspective, I know we mentioned training, but how do you feel about civilian review committees, kind of Monday night quarterback in law enforcement professionals?
If you train civilian review boards properly, I don't think you have an issue.
Okay.
First of all, you have to hire the right people. That's important. Hire the right people, give them the training that they need and deserve. And now you have a better chance of getting people that sit down and say, first of all, there's a rule of law. What does the rule of law say about what the officer did? If it fits, it's fine. We can't have judgment based on, I feel this way, I feel this way. It's based on the rule of law. If the law says I was justified, then I'm justified. Not, if it was me, maybe I would have done something else.
Yeah.
You can't judge it that way. But also you have to understand that when people judge police constantly in a certain light, you have to ask yourself, whose fault is that? Have we taken the time to explain to them some of these scenarios? Now, through the Bronze Shields of Passaic County, we've done that. We brought people into auditoriums. We give presentations where we run through scenarios. So people get to play the police officer, they get to play the civilian, and they get to see how we feel. And you'll be surprised how people get nervous when you get them a plastic gun, you're playing the police officer. They get very nervous. And they start to understand that this is for real. It's not for real. You have an orange plastic cap gun. But their heart rate goes up, they start to sweat, you play the scenario out, they start to make decisions based on the information that they have. And when these presentations are done, and we've done them in auditoriums with 250 people, when they're done, there's a better understanding and respect for what we do. People don't always agree, but at least they understand it. And everybody has an opinion about, well, you could have, you should have. But as long as we try to express to them how important this is and put them in our shoes, because the difference is we've been in their shoes. Okay, we go on vacation with civilians. Right. We go away with civilians. We weren't born cops, we were civilians. But most people in society have never been police officers before. So we have to take the time to put them in our shoes, let them feel it out, and then go back and ask the same question again in their reaction.
And what's good about too is by educating them, you're also bridging the gap.
Yes.
You know, because there is that understanding that it needs to be put out there. And I want to ask about. So I think we're running low on time. Now that we're on the Manhattan Neighborhood Network, guys, I got to keep the show within 28 minutes. So this is very hard because conversations like this can go on forever. So I want to make sure I get to air it and I can't go past a certain time frame, which is 28 minutes. I want to talk about implicit bias. Okay, now, there's a lot of officers right now that are being forced to go back to training because of implicit bias. Basically, biases that they don't know they have that when they come on the scene. And I believe, okay, we all have it, so I'm not against that. I believe that it's definitely needed. But I also believe that the people that are reviewing the videos of officers, that are also making judgments on how we do our job, I also think that they should go for some form of implicit bias training, because I do believe to some extent, and not 100%, don't get me wrong, nothing's 100%, but I do believe there is an anti-cop sentiment to some extent. And I believe that I would like to just to even out the ground a little bit and say, if we're going to go for training, you know, that I also believe, just to be fair, that the public should also go for training. So like you mentioned, we can build a bridge to better understand each other. Because if you're only working on one side, the other side's going to get defensive and resistant. So if I'm going through implicit training, I would also like to, implicit bias training, I would also like to see the public go through that same type of training. Now, I want your answer on this, but I want to go to Mike first. Okay. Mike, do you understand where I'm coming from, or what's your thoughts?
Well, absolutely. I mean, here it is. You could watch a football game, and you could have your opinion on it, but until you play the game around the field and ran the play and got tackled, and then you could really talk about what's going on. Before that, you're just a spectator. Right? It's like going to the movies. You don't really know what's going on. You're watching a movie, and that's what it is to people. Until they've really experienced the job, they would never really know what's about it. And it's through the training and experience. But law enforcement officers act upon their training and experience. That's one of the main things.
Right now, but do you also feel like that, again, the implicit bias deals with the fact that we have a type of prejudice that we may not know about. Okay, and I believe that we all may have it that we don't know about, so I'm really okay with going through the implicit bias training, which I mentioned before. But do you believe, because of the anti-cop sentiment that's going out there right now, do you believe that if I'm a cop and I'm to be comfortably reviewed by a civilian committee, do you think that they should also seek some form of implicit bias training?
Well, yeah, so they're not automatically against you. Absolutely.
Yeah. What's your thought? I know, because you're a community. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I don't know if implicit bias training is going to change my biases. Okay, what is it going to do? Is it going to make me realize that I have them? Maybe. I haven't been through the training.
So do you think it's effective?
I think it can be effective.
Okay.
It can be effective because you have to understand that you do have them. And then you realize, once you admit to yourself that you have them, then you address how you deal with it. You look at certain things a certain way, and you act a certain way. But what is that action? We're professionals. So we don't have the right to have a fear of a person because of the color of their skin,
right,
and react based on that. You don't have that right. We give up that right. Other people in society, maybe they can. We're professionals. We can't do that. So we have to understand, yes, I may have a bias. Where did my bias come from? Television, just like society judges police. Their biases come from television and movies and things like that. YouTube, World Star, wherever it is. May I have that bias? Maybe. But how do I act upon it? When I meet a person that I've seen on a video acting a certain way, when I come into contact with them, how do I treat them? They deserve the opportunity the same as everyone else gets. But now their actions dictate, this is what I did. Now someone can say, well, you didn't like him because he had a blue shirt and his bald head. That could be true. Maybe I didn't like him. But his actions dictated what I did, not the fact that I didn't like him when I walked in the room. And that's where it has to be. Your implicit biases are what they are. But can you control it? And if you can't, then you have a problem.
Okay, so real quick in closing, we have about 30 seconds left. Well, 30 seconds apiece left. If you could give one piece of advice to someone that had to review an officer-involved shooting, and to really get the understanding of an officer's subjective perspective, what would you tell them? If you had to see somebody right now that was reviewing a video of an officer-involved shooting, what would be the piece of advice you would tell them?
To know all the facts of the circumstances, the totality of the circumstances, as well as know the law and not base your opinion on opinion, not base it upon the facts of the law.
Well said, 100% agreement. What about the same question?
I would have to say the same thing. First of all, know the rule of law. Did the person, the officer, did he break the law? If he did not, now put yourself in that position and see what you would have done with the same options. You can't create options. You have to judge yourself based on what was the option at this time. And that's what everything is done by. We see things, our eyes see one thing, and our brain go through these scenarios very fast. So what people think that for us it was a blink of the eye, we actually went through our training and everything that fast and made a decision. It was a proper judgment based on our training experience. I've seen things that you would not see because you've never been where I've been. And that's only normal. So you have to take the time to show people and tell them, put yourself in this position. And let's find a way to put people in those positions.
Right, and that's the key, guys. The reason why I wanted to do this show, and first of all, thank you, Michael Wolhfert, owner of Justifiable Force. Guys, check out his Facebook page. He's an expert, and I'm telling you guys, if you have a correctional system out there, or you have law enforcement, you're looking to get trained, he has revolutionized the use of defensive tactics, and thank you for that, because you're saving officers' lives. And also, Lieutenant Dalton Price, you got a book for community policing, which is making the effort to bridge back the relation, or to bring back a good positive relationship between law enforcement and the community, and it's people like that who know both sides who are going to help us get to that next level. It's never about left or right, it's about the middle, and you took an effort to write about the middle, and I believe that's what's needed, so, and kudos to that, because a lot of people aren't writing about that. And also, real quick, just in closing, I just want to remind people that the reason why I had this show is I just want people to get a better understanding of the officers involved in the shooting. I just want them to understand what we're going through, because we're people too, and at the end of the day, when there's a shooting that's involved, no one's asking the officer how do they feel. What are they thinking? Because at the end of the day, that's another life we have to worry about, because their original intent was not to take a life. Their original intent was to save a life. So as always, the show is Tear Talk. Love you guys. Stay safe, and follow me on my multiple venues. And don't forget Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Love you guys. Do you agree? Yeah, I think so. Doesn't get out there. So what I'll do is I'm going to work on it today. You know me, I'll be up all night, so I will. I know me. So I'll probably, what I'll do is I'll probably have this